day. We had a very brief shower about 15 minutes ago, which fortunately made the track immediately greasy, but seemingly hasn't kept it too damp. So there's a very clear and definitive dry line, and in fact now off the racing line it's pretty clear as well, which should make for some excellent racing, which we have seen throughout the course of the year in the Euroseries, powered by Nova, particularly amongst the very evenly matched Ginetta G50s. Now let's watch for that pink car. Number 2, Diego Mendes and Jose Luis Telemann was very competitive in race 1, but eventually, because Telemann pitted outside the pit window, that rather cost them with a minute's penalty added to their time. But I think we can expect to see both Mendes and Telemann looking to challenge possibly for a podium as the race unfolds. Other cars of interest at the back of the field, the BMW of Thomas Martinsson and Oscar Kruger was right at the sharp end of the field, the two Swedish drivers for race 1. But they made the wrong choice on tyres, but there it is, the dark BMW, and then also Marco Helistangas and Fredrik Blomstedt, the red Ginetta. They have won already this year. They very, very nearly won the first race, but for it being one lap fewer, they would have done. But all things being equal, it is hard to see past Pavel Lefterov having a fairly dominant afternoon. It depends whether or not Oliver Freymuth can get onto terms with him in the early stages. The cars forming up now side by side into Blanchimont. Lights, or the pace car just bringing them under control. Getting ready for the acceleration. Lefterov will have the responsibility of pacing the field alongside Freymuth. This is a track that Freymuth would know well from his time competing in the Renault Megane Trophy as part of the World Series by Renault. As the cars turn into the bus stop chicane now, and then flick out, waiting for the lights on the gantry to change for this 8th race of the season in the Euroseries powered by Nova to get underway. It's a little bit messy further back down the order as we are held, and now we go. It's a good jump from Simeon Ivanov, but Pavel Lefterov in the Lotus Evora in the middle of the road is going to lead the challenge towards La Source. Javier Ibran looking to make ground in the buggy experience Ginetta. It all gets very congested, and around goes Jose Balbiani, who gets punted into a spin. A little bit of smoke coming from the Ginetta. Hopefully no damage has been done as Lefterov leads from Freymuth. The pair of them already clear of Simeon Ivanov, the sky blue car, and then we've got Mark Spiekeros, and the pink car of Diego Mendes is next along. Also having made good progress early on is Marco Helistangas. He's jumped up clear of Javier Ibran as they run along the Kemmel Straight and then flick into Les Combes. Even the Balbiani car, which was pushed into that spin, is it's back up and running. He's not lost too much ground, but already Pavel Lefterov beginning to ease away from Oliver Freymuth. And then we've got Spiekeros, who has moved into 3rd. Up ahead of Simeon Ivanov, Diego Mendes has got Alberto Vescovi, and Marco Helistangas queuing up behind him. There's the bright red car, number 15 of Helistangas. He'll be looking to try and gain as much ground in these early stages whilst the field are all fairly tightly bunched. But Pouin still just got that patch of a damp track on the approach, but no concern for Helistangas is running out wide. There is Alberto Vescovi. Vescovi rejoins without being caught and passed by Javier Ibran. It shows that the track is still just a little bit treacherous if you put a wheel on the curb or run out a little bit wide. No concerns for Pavel Lefterov. He leads and is already trying to break clear. Meanwhile, the good scrap behind Luca Magnoni working around the outside of Ivaio Sonev. And they have got Thomas Martinsson in the BMW just behind them. And then Jose Balbiani trying to close the gap down as well. It's a 50-minute timed race. not the number of laps, as Heather Stangas looks to line up a move on Diego Mendes towards the bus stop chicane. Heather Stangas sees a gap to the inside and goes for it, draws alongside, not dissimilar, Ginetta G50. And that's great defensive driving from Diego Mendes, who was able to maintain the track position, gave him the inside line for the left-hander as they came out of the bus stop chicane. Pavel Lefterov leads at the end of lap 1 from Oliver Freymuth by 3.2 seconds. Mark Spikawas is in third, fourth Simon Ivanov, fifth is this battle between Diego Mendes and Marco Heather-Stangas. Here's another look at it then. Heather-Stangas drew alongside but not ahead of Mendes. It gave Mendes the opportunity to claim the apex to the left-hander, and therefore no way through for the Finnish driver. Stangas instead looking to try and challenge coming out of Radion along the Kemmel Straight. He'll certainly have the slipstream effect to his benefit. They may also be able to close up to Simeon Ivanov as well. Stangas moves to the inside line, and I think he has made it stick this time around. Diego Mendes again determined to try and dispute it, but he can't on this occasion. Through goes Marco Heather-Stangas and up into fifth position as they roll downhill towards the Bruxelles hairpin. Alberto Vescovi also now looking to try and join in that scrap. Here is our race leader, 17-year-old Pavel Lefterov. He's currently lying second in the European GT4 standings. Oliver Freymuth is there in second place. And third place, Spikawas. Then we have got this gaggle of Ginettas from fourth through to seventh. Here is Javier Ibran, who was third in race 1 earlier on, alongside Matthias Bakker. And Javier Ibran knows that if he could just stay in contention with the leading group, then Matthias Bakker could well race that car through the pack in the latter stages of the race. Ibran trying to close up to Alberto Vescovi. There is Vescovi. Like so many of these drivers, Vescovi has got a strong track record, having competed in a variety of GT and endurance races. It's now Heather-Stangas looking to try and line up a move on Simeon Ivanov. Ivanov so impressive at the Red Bull Ring. He's struggled a little bit elsewhere in 2015, but he has got a good opportunity to potentially challenge for a podium this afternoon, as thinking about the move to the inside but not quite able to pull it off is Heather-Stangas. Instead, again, he runs in flying formation behind the Bulgarian driver as they complete the second lap of the race. Meanwhile, Alberto Vescovi has found a way past Diego Mendes, so a couple of changes in position towards the end of the past lap. Vescovi to the inside at La Source, but outbreaks himself, very nearly runs wide. He does very well, in fact, to bring that car back on to the racing line. That means there's no way past for Diego Mendes. What about Heather-Stangas on Ivanov? He follows very similar Ginetta through Eau Rouge, now to Radion, now onto the Kemmel Straight. Again, this is where Stangas can take advantage of the slipstream and potentially look to challenge for fourth place as they get to the braking zone at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Ducking out now and looking to the inside, it is Heather-Stangas. He draws alongside Simon Ivanov and glides past. Very, very nicely done by Marco Heather-Stangas. He goes fourth, but he's now got a little bit of ground to make up to third place. Car of Mark Spikawas, that is about 2.5 seconds, maybe a little bit more, that he needs to try and chase down. Out front, Pavel Lefterov leads by just shy of 5 seconds from Oliver Freymuth. Freymuth in turn has got 5 seconds over Spikawas, and then we've got this battle for fourth, which is now resolved in favour of Heather-Stangas, who is already setting about breaking away from Simeon Ivanov, but Ivanov will do all he can to at least try and stay with him. And then we've got Alberto Vescovi in 6th, Diego Mendes is 7th, Javier Ibran 8th, Luca Manoni 9th, Jose Balbiani in 10th, just clear of Thomas Martinson and Ivaio Sonev, currently in 12th. And this is the fight for fourth, about to come the fight for third. not on the basis of the run through the middle sector, because well, in fact, yes it is, because Heather Stangas was 0.6 quicker than Mark Speakavos through the middle sector. And that means that he's broken away from Simeon Ivanov. He's already closing up on to the number 10, Ginetta, as they head out of Blanchimont and arrive into the chicane. Here are the leaders. Pavel Lefterov almost 6 seconds clear of Oliver Freymuth. Freymuth in turn comfortably quicker than the fight for third position, which flashes across line now, and Heather Stangas well within a second of Mark Speakavos, and you just wonder whether or not Heather Stangas is even going to be close enough to challenge, maybe coming out onto the Kemmel Straight this time around. I don't think he is. Needs to be probably 2 or 3 car lengths closer, but nonetheless he is doing a very good job in an unhurried way of reeling in a third place car. We've got one car into the pit lane, that's Luca Mainoni, and that's an unplanned pit stop well outside the pit window. Heather Stangas using the tow to get right onto terms with Speakavos by the time they arrived at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Now, what the Finn needs to do is just maintain that gap. Meanwhile, Diego Mendes and Alberto Vescovi go side by side into Les Combes. It is Vescovi who still is able to maintain that very slender advantage. Headlights ablaze for the Italian as the Argentine Mendes pursues, with Javier Ibran in 8th, just a couple of seconds back from that scrap as well, so there is still little to choose. Meanwhile, here is the fight for third place. Heather Stangas, the way he's moved up through the field has been really impressive in that he's not unduly hurried himself. He's just, he knows where he can pass with the least drama and the least risk, and that is generally speaking where he's waiting to try and make his challenge, but he then forces that slight mistake from Speakavos coming out of Fania. The number 10 Ginetta runs out over the AstroTurf again on the approach to Stavolo. It's a sense though of just how much it's drying out, that the AstroTurf isn't so slippery that it's pitching those cars sideways as it perhaps was a little bit earlier on in the day. Accelerating on towards Blanchimont. This is the 4th lap. We are just about 9.5 minutes away from the pit window opening. Is Heather Stangas going to be close enough to challenge into the bus stop chicane? I think he certainly thought he was, because he forces the black Ginetta Speakavos to go defensive, and then there's a mistake from the number 10 car, snapping sideways midway through the chicane. Heather Stangas not quite able to take advantage, but instead he is perfectly poised to have that run along the Kemmel Straight. Let's see if he can do it. They've also now got Simeon Ivanov closing back onto their tail around La Source and then downhill towards Eau Rouge, and this time around Heather Stangas has got the pace to challenge Speakavos. Climbing out of Radillon, this is where the slipstream effect really comes to the fore. He needs the tow to close up about 3 car lengths and then to challenge on the brakes into Les Combes. Is it going to work for Heather Stangas on this occasion? Oh, something's gone pop for somebody. That was very strange, just the smoke suddenly appearing midway down the Kemmel Straight. Neither car seems to have been particularly deterred, but it looked for a moment as if one of the engines had expired. Clearly not the case. Just running a little bit wide into Bruxelles there was Speakavos, making sure he covered the inside line, and they gathered up again to claim the apex on the exit, running now downhill towards Pouhon. Speakavos forced into a slightly defensive move. He just moved across to the inside, making sure that Heather Stangas couldn't prize the opening on the way into Pouhon. The next real challenge for Heather Stangas is probably going to be into the bus stop chicane. So it's the G55 just ahead of the Ginetta G50, and it is a little bit of smoke, isn't it, that's coming from the car of Mark Spiekervos, just on the gear shift on that occasion. Whatever it is, it's not delaying him too much at the moment. Meanwhile, here is a replay of Luca Mainoni, Ivaio Sonev. That's advantage Mainoni. It's been a slightly odd race this as well for Ivaio Sonev. He was very, very competitive and impressive in race 1, but for whatever reason he just doesn't seem to have the pace underneath him in race 2. As now side by side coming out of Blanchimont, Spiekervos runs wide. It's giving Heather Stangas the opportunity to challenge, this time to the outside line into the bus stop chicane, and Heather Stangas is going to try and go elbow to elbow. He can't quite carry the momentum. Great defensive driving, but then Spiekervos slings it sideways, and that's going to give Heather Stangas the opportunity to carry the momentum along towards the Lassour's hairpin, but still the number 10 car covers the inside line. Again, Heather Stangas has to concede the corner, looks for the switchback. They've been joined now well and truly by Simeon Ivanov. The race order, so we're just about 50 minutes in, is Pavel Lefterov leads, Oliver Freimuth is second. This is the fight for third between Mark Spiekervos and Marco Heather Stangas. In fifth, we've got Simeon Ivanov, sixth, Alberto Vescovi, seventh, Diego Mendes, eighth is Javier Ibran, ninth, Jose Balbiani, and 10th, Thomas Martinson. This time around, Spiekervos has to very preemptively cover the inside line, but again, Heather Stangas can't quite draw alongside the G55, and instead Heather Stangas forced to gather it all up a little bit more abruptly than he would have liked to, because he has got Simeon Ivanov now breathing down his neck. All the while, as this group of cars battle, they are circulating some 5 seconds a lap slower than Pavel Lefterov and Oliver Freimuth at the front of the field. So it really is between the Evora and the McGann to decide who's going to win the race. This is the increasingly frenetic battle for third, which is now 11 seconds clear of the fight for sixth place between Alberto Vescovi, Diego Mendes and Javier Ibran. Swooping through Pouhon on towards Fagnes. Heather Stangas, this is now a little bit frustrating. He's tried to force that mistake from Spiekervos, which has not happened just yet, although the black G55 has been living dangerously, running out onto the AstroTurf on more than one occasion, flicking sideways a couple of times at the bus stop chicane. It's never been given a decisive advantage to Heather Stangas, who is revving up his efforts once more as he pursues Spiekervos along towards Blanchimont. The flick through the left-handers, then on towards the right-hand kink that feeds them into the bus stop chicane. Again, Spiekervos covers the inside line, forces Heather Stangas to look to the outside. Heather Stangas instead will try for the mistake and then sees an opening, looks to the inside, and this time squeezes the G55 out wide, and that has been a move several laps coming from Marco Heather Stangas. He catches Mark Spiekervos by surprise and is able to snatch away past. Spiekervos busy defending almost immediately from Simeon Ivanov as they run downhill. Here's another look at it. It's very tight on the apex. There was never a gap there to start with, but Heather Stangas riding over the sausage curb, just about able to force the move and make it stick. Look at the other angle. Shows that Spiekervos saw just at the last instance that Heather Stangas was coming, but now Heather Stangas has got to try and defend from the G55 in a straight line along the Kemmel Straight. Simeon Ivanov also inviting himself to that party. They all run to the inside line into Les Combes. Amazingly, the order remains as it was, and it's Simeon Ivanov who overcommits and takes to the escape route. So now the boot slightly on the other foot for Marco Heather Stangas. Now that he's passed the Ginetta, Spiekervos, he has now got to try and keep it behind him once more. Running through the Bruxelles hairpin and then swooping down, flicking through the left-hander and on towards Pouhon. All three of them got headlights well and truly up and running. It's going to be the end of the lap after this one, where they can start to think about pit stops as Spikavos runs out a little bit wide onto the curbs. Again, he gets away with it. It doesn't delay him at all. He immediately starts to chase down Helle Stangas as they tip into Fania. It's a very chilly afternoon here in Spa. It will have taken them a little bit of time to get some heat into their Michelin tyres. And once they have been into the pits, that is going to be the other point where they're going to have really maximum jeopardy, as the drivers who are doing the whole race single-handedly may risk being caught out on cold tyres, and those that are taking over from the pits will just have to feel their way in. And of this battle, Spikavos hands over to Tiziano Cappelletti. Helle Stangas, it's on to Frederick Blomstead. Only Simeon Ivanov is going to go the duration on his own. So this is the bus stop chicane at the end of lap 7. This is the 8th race of the year in the Euroseries, powered by Nova, of the bus stop chicane and across the line. This time around, Spikavos looks to the inside into La Source. Helle Stangas turns in, sees the Black Ginetta G55 there, and possibly could have defended that a little bit more robustly instead as they run downhill towards Eau Rouge. Helle Stangas maybe looking to commit to a brave one. Spikavos, though, able just to shut the door in time. Enthralling third place battle this is. In the lead, it's Pavel Lefterov. He is 11 seconds clear of Oliver Freymuth. Freymuth, in turn, is 18 seconds ahead of this third place. As they run side by side on the brakes towards Les Combes. And Mark Spikavos has got an awful lot of confidence on the brakes, but he just clips the AstroTurf, runs out wide, and this time he loses out to both of the G50s as Simeon Ivanov is also able to pounce. That's really the first mistake we've seen from Spikavos. He's been running out onto the curbs more than once. That's the first time the AstroTurf caught him and it began to bite. So he slips down into 5th. Fortunately, they are 13.5 seconds ahead of Alberto Vescovi in 6th place. And Vescovi's got his hands well and truly full of Diego Mendes. The pit window is now open for 10 minutes. They must all make a mandatory pit stop, even if they are running as single driver entry. So that means that the car we're watching, Simeon Ivanov, must at some point duck into the pit lane to serve his pit stop. Already in is Ivaio Sonev. I don't know whether or not that would be mechanical pit stop or not. Here's another look at it. Spikavos just sideways, and as he corrected it, put him onto the grass on the other side of the circuit. The momentum not quite with him. Yeah, the car all sideways onto the grass, has to back out of it. And that's what cost him the 2 places. Meanwhile, Thomas Martinsson in the BMW, passed at a clip by a sliding Luca Manoni. Another look at it. And Martinsson having to take a very tight line to get back on track, which he eventually does. Oh, and did that pitch him into a little bit of a spin indeed? That's a real shame for Martinsson. Day that promised so much with the BMW qualified towards the front of the field for race 1. Here then is our race leader, Pavel Lefterov. He scored the victory in race 1. Meanwhile, tyre change for Ivaio Sonev is underway. Lefterov leads. Second place is the McGann Trophy car of Oliver Freymuth. In third now it's Marco Helle Stangas. 4th, Simeon Ivanov. 5th, Mark Spikavos. Into the pit lane now for Javier Ibran. It's going to be his fellow Trofeo Maserati alumni, Matthias Bakker, who will be jumping in. And Bakker was very, very impressive in race 1. The Dutchman who was fighting at the very sharp end of the field. So we'll see if he can make ground on the 8th place, where Javier Ebran was running pre-pit stops. Pavel Lefterov, will he be able to make it 2 from 2 here in the Euroseries powered by Nova? At the moment, it is looking very positive for him, you'd have to suggest. Also into the pits is Luca Magnoni. This is the planned pit stop, not the unscheduled one that he had at the start of the race. Magnoni running at a good pace just prior to pitting in. Also in is Alberto Vescovi. Now we're going to see Lefterov peeling to the pits on this occasion. He doesn't need to, as long as he makes his pit stop, comes into the pit lane with more than 20 minutes on the race clock. It's up to him to decide when he wants to do it. And he is going to continue on to his 10th lap. Not surprisingly, the fast lap of the race is in favour of Lefterov. Meanwhile, a change amongst the Swedes. Oscar Kruger jumps in from Thomas Martinsson. Kruger, former star in radical racing, both in Sweden and in the UK. Right, here is the second place car of Oliver Freymuth. Freymuth now 16 seconds back from the race leader, Pavel Lefterov. But under no particular pressure from Marco Helastangas. Freymuth, who came into the weekend as the points leader in the Euroseries powered by Nova, provided things stay as they are, as we head to the final 2 events of the year in Mugello and Misano, then it would seem as if it's still going to be Freymuth who will be clear out front, but you'd have to suggest particularly Misano may well favour the Blomstedt Helastangas car quite well. Rolling to a halt now is Simeon Ivanov. He ducks in from what was 4th place. The Bulgarian driver opens the door, lets a little bit of fresh air come into the cockpit. Also takes on board a drink. Freymuth, like the race leader, Pavel Lefterov, deciding to leave it relatively late as the Argentinians change over. That is Jose Luis Talleman, who takes over from Diego Mendes. Talleman, who was looking very impressive in race 1. Also into the pits is Jose Balbiani, and that is Roberto Gentili, who takes over from him in car 7. Freymuth just easing the McGann Trophy car around this 7-kilometre challenge of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Always such a favourite with the drivers, because it is an opportunity to truly exploit the car's potential, both in terms of top speed, but also its performance through a flowing sequence of high and mid-speed turns. Just a slight feather of the braking there for Lefterov as he concludes Blanchimont. Next stop is the bus stop chicane, and what is so impressive about the way that Pavel Lefterov goes about his racing is just that he dances the Evora. It always seems to be on the limit of adhesion. And now Lefterov into the pit lane. He pits in pretty much at exactly mid-race distance. He will be hoping for a nice and smooth pit stop for the Lotus Evora, because though the race can't really be won in the pits, it could certainly be lost in the pits, and that's what they'll be looking to avoid, as we're just over half race distance. And this is the driver who has led ever since the start of the race, Pavel Lefterov from Oliver Freymuth in 2nd place, who was also ducked into the pits on this occasion. And also Marco Helastangas comes in as well to hand over to Frederick Blomstedt. So many of the front runners peeling in on this occasion. The only driver that's not is Mark Spekovos to hand over to Tiziano Capoletti. He is going to wait for another lap. The gull-wing doors are open on the McGann of Freymuth. There is Oliver, remaining impassive in the cockpit right now. This is a good scrap out on track. It is Matthias Backer. He has got just behind him Roberto Gentili and Alberto Vescovi. That is the fight for 7th place. And that is a place gained on this lap for Matthias Backer in the buggy experience Ginetta G55. Already is easing away from Gentili, who is pressurising, was being pressurised rather by Alberto Vescovi. Vescovi looks to the inside of Roberto Gentili. Oh, there's almost contact, and around goes Alberto Vescovi. That move was never really on. The gap was always going to close. And Vescovi pitching the car into a spin to avoid contact. Fortunately, it fires up because that was otherwise very, very precariously placed. Just at the blind apex into Fagna. Here's another look at it. Vescovi goes for the move. Closing the door was Roberto Gentili. I think if I was Alberto Vescovi, I would be suggesting that Gentili could possibly have given him a bit more space. It's really, Vescovi had no option but to spin the car to avoid contact. Well, here is the race leader. Pavel Lefterov in second place, Oliver Freymuth. The gap would appear to be much as it was post-pit stops as it was pre-pit stop. The McGann Trophy car, always such a good-looking vehicle, really aggressive but smooth styling. Frederick Blomstedt has emerged from the pits clear of Simeon Ivanov, so those places remain as they were. Mark Speakavos has decided to stay out a little bit later into the pit window before handing over to Tiziano Cappelletti, so that may provide an opportunity for Speakavos and Cappelletti to jump Frederick Blomstedt. Now, in the background, somebody sounded like they were going very sideways. Simeon Ivanov where he should be. Probably find out in a couple of moments' time. It's Frederick Blomstedt, who was very impressive in the early stages in race one. There is Simeon Ivanov, and Blomstedt, very impressive early on in race one, will be keen to consolidate third place. Meanwhile, Speakavos is in. Tiziano Cappelletti now takes over the number 10 car. That's probably the big question with regards to the podium in the time remaining, which is whether or not Tiziano Cappelletti emerges from the pits ahead of Frederick Blomstedt. All the relevant padding has just been removed from the seat of the Ginetta before the slightly taller frame of Cappelletti can clamber in. Across the line, meanwhile, comes Pavel Lefterov, our race leader. He embarks on his 12th lap of the race as we have exactly 20 minutes left on the clock. In second place, it is Oliver Freymuth, and he and Pavel Lefterov have been very much the class of the field. And then the real battle is the one for third. Where will Tiziano Cappelletti emerge, and is it going to mean that Fred Blomstedt's got a little bit of work on his hands in the remaining stage of the race? As again, dancing the Evora is Pavel Lefterov. He really is pushing that car very, very hard, finding the traction to his liking. Through the first sector for Lefterov, he has got a solid 15-second buffer over Oliver Freymuth, and that's a lead that has just been steadily growing as the race has unfolded. Nothing at any stage particularly seismically spectacular from Lefterov like we saw in the latter stages of race one. Instead, it's just been an inexorable growing of the gap at the front of the field. And this is the fight for third, and Frederick Blomstedt has emerged following the pit cycle ahead of Tiziano Cappelletti, but Cappelletti in turn has split the G50s. He is clear of Simeon Ivanov, and this is probably the closest battle that we've got on track at the moment. It is the fight for fourth place. Tiziano Cappelletti possibly a little bit more cautious than Simeon Ivanov, and Ivanov looks to the inside into the Bruxelles hairpin and is able to go through past the Ginetta G55. And in the end, that was reasonably straightforward for Simeon Ivanov. He is elevated up into fourth. Down to fifth goes Tiziano Cappelletti. In sixth is Jose Luis Talaman. Seventh, Matthias Bacher. Eighth, Roberto Gentili. Ninth is Alberto Vescovi. 10th, Luca Magnoni. 11th, Oscar Kruger. And in 12th place, Ivaio Sonev. Well, the car to probably advise you of, although he's a long, long way back, is that of Oscar Kruger, who has just set a time of a 2 minutes 35.7 in the BMW. He is the best part of a lap behind Pavel Lefterov. Isn't going to challenge for the lead, but is, I think, going to put together a very impressive string of laps over the next 17.5 minutes. Simeon Ivanov, having found a way around Tiziano Cappelletti, is easing clear of the black Ginetta G55. Cappelletti, though, he's got now a 25-second or thereabouts buffer over Jose Luis Talaman, which, barring a disaster, should be reasonably defensible, particularly if Cappelletti can just pace himself for another lap or two against Simeon Ivanov. It would just help him maintain that pace to preserve 5th place. Lefterov's lead over Oliver Freimuth is 14.6 seconds. Freimuth is now 22.6 seconds clear of Frederick Blomstedt, and Ivanov 5 seconds back from that. He's got Cappelletti just behind him in 5th. That is going to grow further still after that mistake from Cappelletti at La Source. In 6th place, we have got Jose Luis Talaman, who crosses the line now, 23 seconds back from Tiziano Cappelletti. Matthias Backer is just in behind him. That's probably one of the closer battles, the one between Jose Luis Talaman and Matthias Backer for 6th and 7th. 8th place, Roberto Gentili. 9th, Alberto Vescovi. I am intrigued for the progress of Luca Mainoni and Oscar Kruger, both quick drivers, seemingly out of position down in 10th and 11th. We'll be hoping to see whether or not they can continue to climb through the field. Here is our race leader, Pavel Lefterov, and again, Lefterov pushing hard in the Evora. Won't have liked that Freimuth was a little bit quicker last time around. At the same time, he's got the sort of advantage that really he need not concern himself with. For Lefterov, this is going to be essentially a very, very impressive double victory in the Euroseries powered by Nova. It would be the first double win of the year as well. Every other meeting, the wins have been split. But Lefterov has utterly dominated this weekend. 2 pole positions, victory in race 1, and looking very likely to be a victory in race 2 as well. He turns through the hairpin at La Source and rolls downhill towards Eau Rouge on his 14th lap. 14.5 minutes remaining. Eau Rouge, actually one of the few corners that was very different actually when the Spa-Francorchamps circuit was originally built. It used to be a sharp left-hander that then took them steeply uphill into a hairpin that was a right-hander and then back downhill to a left-hander, but that was eased out, I think, just in the last couple of pre-war events here at Spa. And then the layout always used to be, at this point, that they would continue on towards the Master King and the village of Stavilo before the very, very fast run back. And up until fairly recently, this section of the circuit was public roads, whereas the section now at Les Combes has, ever since its construction in the early 1980s, always been a section of permanent racetrack. So we had a glimpse there of Oliver Freimuth in second. Here is the 3rd placed car of Frederick Blomstedt. Blomstedt now 7.5 seconds clear of Simeon Ivanov, with Ivanov also having broken away from Tiziano Cappelletti. As Blomstedt just rolls downhill. The closest battle we've got is the one for 6th between Jose Luis Talaman and Matthias Backer, and both of those cars also closing quite rapidly up onto the tail of Tiziano Cappelletti. So certainly that 5th place is not done and dusted just yet. 3rd place for Frederick Blomstedt and Marco Helistangas, however, is looking very, very secure. This would be their 6th podium in 8 races for the 2015 season. consistency for Stangas and Blomstead has been absolutely key. For Oliver Freymuth, it would be on the trip back to the podium for the double race winner this season. Pavel Lefterov not really featuring the points chase particularly, but certainly in the mix for an emphatic double win this weekend. Well, here comes the fight for 6th place. Jose Luis Talaman in the pink number 2 car, just clear of Matthias Backer in the silver and fluorescent orange G55. Matthias Backer, an alumni of the Trofeo Maserati World Series. Jose Luis Talaman has raced with success in Argentina, the 26-year-old, also been racing in European GT4 competition throughout 2015. But now Matthias Backer potentially with a little bit of a run as they came out of Stavelot on towards Blanchimont. So they swing through the double left-hander. Now crucially, this battle is running in lap time sort of the 2-minute 36, 2-minute 37 second bracket. That's 6 seconds a lap quicker than Tiziano Cappelletti ahead of them. Cappelletti has gone through with a 2 minutes 42.7 as a big sideways moment from Matthias Backer. Just a little bit exuberant with the right foot coming out of the bus stop chicane. And again, 2-minute 37s, as here is a very, very sideways moment for Pavel Lefterov, our race leader. Shows just how hard he's trying. Again, Matthias Backer seems to always be on the verge of making the pass on Jose Luis Talaman, but somehow the Argentinian G50 pilot just able to keep the Ginetta G55 of Matthias Backer behind him. They climb out of Eau Rouge, running it out along the Kemmel Straight. Is this going to be the opportunity, an opening for Backer? Certainly Talaman knows he's coming, moves straight across to the inside line, then moves back across the racing line. Matthias Backer can't quite carry that momentum to draw alongside and challenge. Their deficit to Tiziano Cappelletti, 11.8 seconds. So they should catch Cappelletti between now and the flag as Talaman looks to defend to the inside line into the Bruxelles hairpin. And then begin to swing downhill. Left-hander and on towards Poulin. And again, defensive stuff here from Talaman. He knows that Backer has probably got the pace, if he could get past him, to romp off into the distance. He's determined to hold on to this 6th position. Slight frustration is that if Backer could find a way past, 4th place is on the cards for Matthias Backer. He's substantially faster as well than Simeon Ivanov, currently in 4th position. But there's no way through just yet for Matthias Backer, who also doesn't want to risk an unnecessary instance. So the 2 Ginettas, the G50 and the G55, sweep out of Stavelot onto the run back to the pits. They're on their 15th lap. Again, they're having a lap which is substantially faster than that of Tiziano Cappelletti, who they will probably be catching before the checkered flag. Running out a little bit wide there is Jose Luis Talaman, but he's doing enough to still keep Matthias Backer behind him. A pair of them flick through the bus stop chicane and on towards La Source. It was at 2 minutes 41.5 Tiziano Cappelletti, a 2 minutes 37.4 for Talaman, and therefore he is just 7.7 seconds back from Cappelletti. The quickest car currently circulating in the race is Frederick Blomstead in 3rd, but given these 32 seconds off the leader and 21 seconds back from Oliver Freymuth, I think that's more for his own enjoyment. Likewise, Oscar Kruger absolutely flying at the wheel of the BMW, but he is in 11th position, despite being the 2nd fastest car in the race. The ground he needs to make up is too substantial, as now we could catch a glimpse of Tiziano Cappelletti, and it is going to be in the next lap or so, isn't it, that this fight for 6th becomes the battle for 5th. Talman just having a little bit of a wiggle midway through Les Combes, shows how hard he is pushing as the cars roll downhill towards the Bruxelles hairpin. Swoop through the right-hander, then onto the unnamed left-hander. Here is Pavel Lefterov having a huge amount of fun in the Lotus Evora, squirming around on the brakes all the time, really enjoying driving through the aerodynamic grip and beginning to have to rely on the mechanical grip of the Lotus just a little bit more than the manufacturer maybe intended. So in to his 17th lap for Lefterov, and again a slightly slower lap, 2 minutes 37.6. Here comes Oliver Freymuth with a 2 minutes 37.2. So Freymuth fractionally faster. The gap between the pair of them still well over 10 seconds. Frederick Blomstedt about to conclude what will have been another very rapid lap for the Swede. 2 minutes 35.5. So he is now 19 seconds back from Oliver Freymuth. He's almost within 30 seconds of the race leader. 4th position for Simeon Ivanov. And Ivanov's pace has really plunged the past couple of tours. Last time it was almost a 2 minutes 41 as Matthias Bakker looks to challenge Jose Luis Talman into the bus stop chicane. He can't find any sort of opening from the Argentine driver. They have got Tiziano Cappelletti looming large ahead of them. What sort of lap time do we get this time around? 2 minutes 38. They are beginning to slow themselves down. Matthias Bakker losing patience. You just wonder if he'd held his nerve, whether there was something to the inside at La Source as a snatch break for Jose Luis Talman, a slight wave in the cockpit. And I think he has had to concede defeat in the battle to Matthias Bakker. The G55 has got its nose, or had its nose in front midway down the hill. Now, who is feeling bravest here? The answer is Talman, and he reclaims the position. Great stuff from Jose Luis Talman, because it looked as if that had finally been decided in favour of Matthias Bakker. Got Cappelletti some 4.5 seconds ahead of them. They won't quite catch him on this lap. It's going to be the one after. Jose Luis Talman for the second time this lap, just snatching a break into the heavy braking zone, and Matthias Bakker swarming all over his tail. You just wonder at what point that Bakker is going to commit to the brave move. At the same time, Talman is being very astute and robust in his defence, always moving very early to cover the inside line for any given corner. He's going to make Matthias Bakker do this the hard way and try and drive around the outside of him. And as a result, that means there are very few options to Bakker again, right across the inside line for Talman, and then back across the track to claim the racing line for Pouhon. A pair of them continuing closing on each other, and now it's just getting a little bit ragged from Jose Luis Talman. There's been more than one occasion this lap where he's either run wide, snatched a break, and that will give Matthias Bakker hope. It's the pair of them still fighting over 6th place, run pretty much as closely as they have done at any point in the race. Matthias Bakker is going to have to possibly try something a little bit unusual, a little bit brave, because Jose Luis Talman knows to cover the inside line. He is also not unafraid to get his elbows out if he really needs to. And as a result, that is ensuring that Matthias Bakker is going to have to do a fair bit of juggling just to try and see what he can do to force the move. And I suspect this has been a much slower lap for both Talman and Bakker. Across the line they come now. Yes, 2 minutes 39. So they are still 1.6 seconds back from Tiziano Cappelletti. But the capture of Cappelletti may provide the opening that Matthias Bakker needs to possibly jump both cars. Here, meanwhile, is Pavel Lefterov, who is romping through his penultimate lap of the race. For a 19-lap encounter for this Euroseries powered by Nova. As Lefteroff eases through Fania. His lead over Oliver Freymuth has been re-established out to 11.7 seconds. Frederick Blomstead is continuing to erode both of their advantage, but not at any sort of rate of catch that's going to be providing concern for the pit crews of either Lefteroff or Freymuth. In fourth place, Simeon Ivanov is looking very, very secure. It is the fight for fifth, which is the one that's ongoing. In eighth place, it's Roberto Gentili. Ninth is Alberto Vescovi. Oscar Kruger now up to 10th. Clear Luca Mainoni, and then Ivayo Sonev continues to circulate, but he is a lap down. Through the bus stop chicane for the penultimate time for Pavel Lefteroff. He picks up the throttle, accelerates over the start and finish line into the final 7 kilometres of racing for the weekend in the Euroseries powered by Nova. And this time around, it's been much more straightforward for Pavel Lefteroff. In race 1, it was only on the last lap where he was able to snatch the lead. Meanwhile, here is the fight for fifth, because Tiziano Cappelletti has been caught by Jose Luis Talleman, who now doesn't know whether to attack or defend. He's trying to do both at once. It opens the door to Matthias Backer, who gets his elbows out, tries to squeeze through on the way into Stavolo, but again, great stuff from Jose Luis Talleman. He knows where to take the risks and where he can lean on the car, and it works to great effect once more. Some very interesting lines being deployed by Talleman, but it doesn't really seem to be slowing him down an awful lot through Blanchimont. And as they pick up the pace, it means they close up Tiziano Cappelletti once more, and this is going to be a little bit of a bum fight on the brakes into the chicane. Cappelletti able to just carry enough pace into the bus stop to ensure that Talleman can't find a way through. They have got one more lap to resolve this battle. Just hoping that it doesn't end in tears, but it is looking a little bit ferocious as they roll on to the hairpin. Swoop around La Source and then downhill towards Eau Rouge. It's going to be the run along the Kemmel Straight, which is potentially going to prompt one of the key overtaking opportunities. Flick through Eau Rouge now, and carrying an awful lot of pace there is Jose Luis Talleman, whereas Matthias Backer instead focuses on the exit speed, and it works to very, very good effect for both Talleman and Backer. Matthias Backer goes high and then down to the inside, but that space is occupied by Talleman, and it's Jose Luis Talleman who's going to be the winner here. He moves into fifth position. Matthias Backer also glides through past Cappelletti into sixth, and then Talleman makes the mistake at Les Combes, and this is the opening for Matthias Backer. He runs side by side as they turn downhill and on towards the Bruxelles hairpin. They're still side by side, but only now does Matthias Backer make the move for fifth. Stick, but around the outside looks Talleman. That was speculative. He needs to cover the line as well for Cappelletti. For Pavel Lefteroff, this has been an absolutely emphatic performance for the Evora driver. He has utterly dominated this second race of the weekend here in Spa, and victory in the 8th race for the Euroseries powered by Nova goes to Pavel Lefteroff. He does a delighted double in Spa-Francorchamps. Second place to Oliver Freymuth, and completing the podium it will be Marco Heller-Stangas and Frederick Blomstead. Here comes Blomstead. He and Heller-Stangas have had an excellent day's racing. A second place and a third to show for their efforts. At some point across the line in fourth will be Simeon Ivanov, but this is the fight for fifth. And Matthias Backer, having waited until the last lap to pounce, has now got enough of an advantage over Jose Luis Talleman to arguably not be under pressure from the Argentine on the brakes into the bus stop chicane. But we have seen Talleman is not afraid to push the limits if he really needs to. He runs wide coming out of Blanchimont, carries an awful lot of momentum. Is he going to look to the inside? He's not quite close enough, has to think better of it. Ivanov crosses the line now to take fourth and fifth. A great drive is going to go to a bit of a drag race, but is Matthias Backer in fifth, Jose Luis Talleman in sixth, and Tiziano Cappelletti, Mark Spekavos, who finish in 7th place. into 8th, we will have Roberto Gentili. Here comes Roberto now. As he flip-flops through the bus stop, he has been chased all the way by Alberto Vescovi. And it's the orange car of Vescovi which will finish in 9th place, and then the top 10 will be completed by Oscar Kruger and Thomas Martinson. A great drive from Kruger in the BMW. So plenty for the spectators to enjoy as the Euroseries Powered by Nova heads on to Misano and Mugello to conclude its season. And still very much in dispute between Freymuth, Blomstead and Stangas for the title. In terms of today's race, then Pavel Lefterov wins it from Oliver Freymuth, Marco Stangas and Frederick Blomstead in 3rd from Simeon Ivanov, and Javier Imbran and Matthias Bakker in 5th from Diego Mendez and Jose Luis Talaman in 6th, Mark Spekavos and Tiziano Capoletti in 7th, ahead of Roberto Gentili and Jose Balbiani in 8th, Alberto Vescovi in 9th, Thomas Martinson, Oscar Kruger in 10th from Luca Magnoni and Ivaio Zonev. Let's have a look back then at the highlights of the race, and from the line it was pole sitter Pavel Lefterov who got the jump as the field bunched up for the run towards La Source. The Bulgarian Lotus Evora pilot able to lead through, as behind it was Jose Balbiani who was tipped into a spin. Everybody else able to take evasive action. Starting with the very back of the grid, Marco Stangas did a fine job of scything his way through the field, driving without any impetuosity or impatience, waiting for the right moment and then pouncing. He was eventually able to climb as high as 3rd place before we got to the mid-race pit stop cycle, pulling off an audacious move on Mark Spekavos after several laps of trying. This was the move over the sausage curb to the inside, and through he went. Pit stops put everything on to its head a little bit as Spekavos continued to battle with Heather Stangas. That also allowed Simeon Ivanov to sneak through. Post pit stops, Alberto Vescovi, looking to the inside of Roberto Gentili, found that space was not forthcoming, had a little bit of a spin, whilst out front Pavel Lefterov absolutely dominated, and it was the Bulgarian who scored his 2nd win of the weekend in the Euroseries Powered by Nova. A fine performance from the Bulgarian Lotus Evora driver. 2nd place went to Oliver Freymuth, with Frederick Blomstead and Marco Stangas completing the podium. Well, thank you very much for your company this weekend for the Euroseries Powered by Nova here in Spa-Francorchamps. And for myself, Ben Evans, we'll look forward to seeing you very soon as the season continues.